Welcome to the Selectmen's meeting for Thursday, December 11th, 2014. You'll notice one of us is missing tonight. Paul Healy was called away on family business. The order tonight will be questions from the public, FOSS committee update, Selectmen parcel update, and budget hearings. We'll do library, Board of Health, assessors, Bear Cove Park, Fire Department, Selectmen, legal, town hall, town meeting, unclassified, debt service. We've got one appointment to do, and we've got Selectmen and town administrator reports. And I'm going to flip the order a little bit tonight. I'm going to ask the town administrator if he would touch on a subject that we talked about a little bit last week, but we've got some good news for everybody on it. So I'll turn it over to Ted.
Sure. Thank you, Chairman Lauder. This week I have had a chance to speak based on your last meeting with the chairman of the trustees of the Bathing Beach along with another member. I have asked our real estate counsel to begin looking at the deed as a request of the board and to work with the trustees in concert. I will try to attend their next meeting if they so feel my attendance would be important, along with real estate counsel. But I just wanted to take a moment because we've received a bevy of emails in the office today and yesterday. When I say bevy, I would define bevy as maybe 30 or 40 emails. They all have exactly the same wording, they're pretty aggressive towards the trustees. And I wanted to set the record straight a little bit for folks, since I've worked with the trustees now for several years, and they have been diligently trying to solve several problems at the Bathing Beach. Among them, the issue of the geese and the waste that they leave behind. These are not easy problems for us to get to, and we have laws that are bound by us. So we can't similarly go down there, net them, take them away. They've tried most of the techniques that are known in the marketplace. They didn't work. They went back to several new ideas. They didn't work. Our own real estate counsel, I believe, made a donation to the first project 5 years ago that didn't work. We believe this is a regional issue. I mean, clearly it is. I think even the rudimentary logic would say if we scare them off of our lawn, they're going to go to some lawn nearby. This year in the budget, you'll see an item for the trustees for taking care of the geese management. And they've actually got extra money in the budget because they've agreed to take care of the property that is under the control of the Board of Selectmen, which actually is probably impacted as much, if not more, than the Bathing Beach, because that's a grassy area, and the geese prefer the grass than the parking lot, which is a big part of the Bathing Beach area. So they've agreed to work on your property to manage it simultaneously. So I feel that for the public, it's important to let people know that they've tried and they continue to try, and they, at least my conversations with them, if this doesn't work, they'll look at something else. And so I think it's important, at least for the record, to say that.
Thank you. And I've been working with the trustees and with the Harbor Development Committee. John Thomas, who just rolled off the Harbor Development Committee, spent, and this is not an understatement, years investigating ways of removing the geese. And we finally have come up with something that appears to look like it's going to work pretty well. We'll use it along the whole waterfront, the trustees' property as well as the town property. And the spraying will start sometime in February and March, depending on how Mother Nature treats us. So we'd like to invite everyone to the next trustees meeting, which is January 6th, and you'll have to check the time. The time's not been set yet. Now, I'm looking at this also as a good news story, that we did get so much interest out there that people actually took the time to write us emails. So hopefully that interest keeps coming along, and when we have vacancies on committees, I'm kind of hoping those same 30 people decide to fill out talent bank applications. We'd love to have you, but please stay involved, and please know that the Bathing Beach and the whole harbor area is being looked at. So thank you, Ted, for giving us that.
Sure.
Okay, we'll take 5 minutes of questions from the public. Mr. Collins, do you want to be first?
Hi, thanks. It's Mark Cullings, 44 Spring Street, and I'm president of the Hingham Farmers Market. I suspect we are the largest user of the bathing beach.
Outside of the geese?
Outside. We're actually, yes. I just wanted to comment on this season past because we stirred the pot a little bit with the Canada goose problem at the bathing beach. It's been a problem annually or for years, ever since we've been down there. It's been getting worse. What I wanted to say is that this project that has been undertaken has been effective. It's a temporary fix. I understand that because it's just discouraging the geese from coming to the parking lot, and they are going someplace else. It's not a permanent fix, but from an organization that uses that parking lot for 30 weeks during the year this week and draws a couple of thousand people a week on a nice day, this has been the most successful season as far as goose feces cleanup, which I'm pretty good at. It's an old lacrosse move.
So you would contest perhaps that the geese don't use the parking lot?
Oh, they use the parking lot. They use the parking lot because it's their source of fresh water. Yeah. They bathe in it and they defecate in it. It's awful. And it has been awful for a very long time. I will just state that I appreciate the efforts of citizens who are knowledgeable about the project, and I know that there is a depredation process that will eliminate the geese permanently, and they won't go to somebody else's property. But from where we sit as the users of the bathing beach, and we've been working with the trustees actively for several years about it, we applaud what they're doing. We've always offered to help annually. We pay rent down there. We've offered to put a barrel out with a sign on it, help us fix the geese problem, but we haven't done that. And I think that the process is working. I appreciate what is being done. I hope it continues to be successful. If there are other steps to be taken, I'd like to see that happen too. But they need to go. They are beautiful animals. I admire their beauty on the ground as well as when they're flying as much as anyone, but they don't belong there, and they're a public health hazard. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
And Ted, thank you for doing some quick research on this for us. Anybody else? Carol?
Sorry, I wasn't here last week. Could you just explain what happened last week and what the letters, were they complaining about the goose droppings?
Yes, in essence.
Okay.
And there's a couple things we're going to ask town council to look at the deed and such. So, but the main thing is, how do we move the geese onto a different planet or solar system or somewhere?
Why would what's the deed got to do with the geese?
Just the use and how things happen down at the bathing beach.
Okay, and
so
the spray is still what you're talking about?
Yes, it will begin sometime in February or March, because it has to be put on and then eventually it wears off.
Right. Okay.
So, cool.
We'll be doing egg addling too.
Egg addling too?
Yes, you treat the eggs so hopefully they don't keep.
Alan, do you want to come up for? We won't let you get away that easy.
Alan Peralt, 39 Elm Street. I'm one of the trustees of the bathing beach. Part of that contract, Ted, is also that this guy will, in that area, will addle the eggs. That's putting almost like an oil on the eggs, so actually that some of them don't hatch. The thing with geese, as we've learned over time, painfully, is that they are creatures of habit. Once they come to a certain area, they return to that area. So if we can kind of break that habit with continual treatment, I know what that is. We have a townwide issue, but hopefully that gets them away from this area. So, and is just also another trustee thing, as Betty Foley knows, we're actually getting, hopefully, the proposals tomorrow for the bathing beach for the snack shop.
Excellent.
So we have a few.
We have one in already.
We have one already, and as people may note, the revetment is in the process of being constructed down by the beach, too, to protect the bathhouse, and that's about halfway done now. So we get a few things going on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we look forward to the snack shop.
Yes.
Awesome. Anybody else?
Before you leave town administrators' reports, one thing Ted left out that I'd like to report is that next Monday morning, Ted is going to be the recipient of the Patriot Award, 10 o'clock here at Town Hall, and everyone's invited to come in on the second floor, central meeting room. It's a unique award, and we're very excited about it. So the police will be there, the fire will be there, lots of people, so.
Thank you. Well, congratulations.
Do you want to tell people what that award
Yeah, that would be a good thing.
is about? Because I know Ted and I talked about it.
I think Ted probably can give the best explanation of the Patriot Award. It recognizes.
Really? Is there anybody who is more familiar with the award than I am? I see all these members of the FOSS committee and some members of the Veterans Council, and perhaps one of them would be better off suited to talk about the Patriot Award than me. I'd welcome any of them to jump on up and interrupt me. The Patriot Award is an award given to an individual nominated by a serviceman in the Guard or a serviceman or woman in the Guard for employer support of their efforts to work in the Guard and also work for us. So.
Excellent. So we'll look forward to that. Peter, why don't you come on up, because we'll transition to the FOSS committee report, but if you'd like to add anything about the Patriot Award, that would be very much appreciated. Well, you can sit down at the table.
Fantastic. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Peter Finney, Aberdeen Road, Hingham. To add to what Ted just said, ESGR, Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, is a national organization, and as was just pointed out, goes around to ensure that employers who have Guard and Reserve members supporting our missions, particularly overseas, is an organization that is looking out for those Guard and Reserve members. And I think it's a huge honor that Ted and the town of Hingham have that Patriot Award. I'm very much aware that we've submitted the nomination now for the Freedom Award as well. There are only 15 of those selected a year, I think, and we're going to be in good running for those awards. So I think it's a huge honor. I also just want to say that, and just from my own experience in the Reserve and talking with people around the state, that Hingham has one of the most reputable veterans programs anywhere in Massachusetts, and that the work and the policies, particularly the benefit policies that are afforded of employees of the town of Hingham when they deploy overseas are some of the best. So I think that's a credit to the way the town is run, and I think the citizens of Hingham need to be fully aware of that. It's a great honor. So congratulations, Ted, to you. And we're looking forward to that Freedom Award.
And I have to say, that is the big one. That's the one for the whole town, and this is a precursor to that. This award will allow the town to be considered for the Freedom Award, and it'll be 15 selections out of 150 nationwide by the Department of Defense, and I believe we make a good case. So we'll put our best foot forward to try to win that for the town.
Excellent.
Okay.
Peter, would you like to transition to the FOSS committee and introduce the members of the committee that are here tonight? I see several of them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Peter Finney again, 9 Aberdeen Road. Of the 6 committee members on the FOSS Memorial Committee, 4 of us are here tonight. In addition to me, our expert in geese management, Alan Peralt, Lissa Tully, and John McHugh, who's also a member of the Hingham Veterans Council and our chief veteran on the committee as well. I also want to recognize, hiding in the back, Mr. Thomas Piles, who is the liaison from the advisory committee. And since we last were in front of you on October 9th, he has been at all of our meetings, and more importantly, has been an important advisor and someone who's offered a lot of guidance and help to us as we've worked through the charter that we have been working on. So we're in front of you again tonight, as we said we would, to come and provide an update. When we were last here, Madam Chair, on October 9th, we had co-signed an agreement with the Veterans Council, with Jim Claypool. I want to begin by saying that we are in close contact with Jim and the Veterans Council, and the process since then has been, we've had an October, a November, and just tonight a December meeting Again, trying to work very transparently with the Veterans Council, with the Advisory Committee, and obviously with the Board of Selectmen. What's happened here now is we're looking at, when we left on October 9th, the notion of what our charter left us to do, given that the new intermodal transportation facility building is being built in the Hingham shipyard. There was a question about Article 19 in the annual town meeting, which left us with the charter of doing something at the harbor front. We have had several robust conversations and discussions about that, and bottom line is we've come in front of you tonight with three options for how we as a committee should proceed, including the $40,000 or $45,000, whichever way you look at it, that was allocated to us through the annual town meeting. The first option was to conclude the FOSS committee's work and return the money to the town. The second was a minimal beautification project to the harbor area meant to meaningfully improve the veterans' part of the harbor. That might include an additional flagpole to recognize the United States Coast Guard. There's only 4 flagpoles there now. We need a 5th one. Some other study initiatives, adding a stone memorial to name the Medal of Honor Park itself, and then potentially some work around the Whitney Wharf Bridge, which, as I think most folks know, is in the process of being built and will be done hopefully sometime in 2015. And then the third option was to await further studies and completion of the Whitney Wharf Bridge, encumber the $40,000 until such time that there's further direction about how the engineering projects in that area will impact the area. I'm aware, and we're aware, that the Hingham Harbor Task Force has recently been reconstituted. And so that option would put a veteran on that task force, most likely, and take a look at how we might work together with that task force on what we might do in the harbor. One of the things we want to be careful about, if we can, is spending money and then have it unearthed 3 years later, because there might be significant changes to that entire area. The committee agreed as a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen to go with option number 2, which would be to use that money for beautification projects. Now, that was a meeting that we held in November. Since then, the Veterans Council has gotten underway and begun the process of building the memorial for the intermodal facility in the Hingham shipyard. Mr. Claypool is working closely with Susan Leary, who is the artist that's doing this project. And in a November 20th letter, Ms. Leary to Mr. Claypool, in which I am in possession of, had asked for $3,000 to get the portrait model of the FOSS bust underway. So there's a request by the Veterans Council back to the FOSS committee to use some of that $40,000 to start that. We took a vote on that tonight. It was unanimous. We would like to offer that money if the Board of Selectmen agrees, and then that would get the project started. What we see as next steps overall, with where we're headed next, would be what we might do in terms of working probably a little more collaboratively at this point, now that this bust and the portrait is underway with the Veterans Council. My understanding is that in the middle of January, this bust model portrait will be completed, and we'll most likely at that time ask for a joint meeting between the Veterans Council and the FOSS Memorial Committee to look at that together and offer any other suggestions that we might have. Beyond that, what I see for next steps is coming back in front of the Board of Selectmen sometime early in next year with other recommendations, if you are to agree with option 2, for how we might spend that money on these beautification projects at the harbor in the name of what the article at Article 19 called for under our charter. So let me stop there. I apologize if I went over my time, but does anyone from the FOSS committee have anything further to add? Okay.
If I might, please.
John, come on up.
My name is John McHugh, 86 Central Street, Hingham. I was very, very pleased to be a part of the committee, and I think they did an excellent job. They really studied it pretty well, a number of alternatives, and they were very kind to me as a minority member, so to speak. But it worked out very, very well, and I think they're to be congratulated. But what I would like to state is that the land of Whitney Wharf, the area where we have the memorials for the, particularly for the POW MIA, the land is really deteriorating. It's not getting cared for. The grass is being cut, fine, but none of the other work is being done. And I'd like to bring your attention to the Board of Selectmen and ask them to talk to the Park Department. And look at this is the area with the showcase supposedly going along the waterfront, and this is what the people driving through Hingham every day, the busiest street in town, no question. They see that things are overgrown, bushes aren't trimmed. It's ridiculous. It would be very, very short money to be able to maintain it and to make it something that we all can be proud of all of the time. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Peter, this is wonderful. Thank you to all the committee members. I think you have given us 3 choices and picked the best one. My question to the town administrator, do we have to take a vote to say we like their $4,000 or $3,000? Do we?
Technically, no. I believe they have the authority to spend independently, but it would always, I think, be nice to at least express your support or not, so we don't have issues down the road.
Sure.
I mean, it's us'ns, so.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, and it's great to see the 2 committees working so well together as I hoped and I believe they would. And John, I think that's a fair request on that, and I thank you for bringing that to my attention tonight, and I'm certainly going to look into that.
And that if you give us another flagpole, first off, Jack Rayburn will be extremely happy. And there are many other coasties in town.
Yep.
That would be, I think it's wonderful for you all to keep going and look at all the veterans areas on the harbor. I think that'd be super, because they do need some work. The Compass Rose needs a little tender, loving care.
Good.
It'd be super.
So I would make a motion to support the FOSS Committee's decision to fund in the amount of $3,000 the intermodal project, and specifically the bus that's being created for Seaman Foss.
Thank you, Selectman Gannon.
I'll second it. I don't get to do that very often. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
What more do you need for us to say keep going on your plan?
I think that's it. Thank you so much for your attention tonight, and as I mentioned, we'll be back at the start of the new year with the next update.
And thank you for your collaborative effort. That's the way it ought to be.
Yeah. And congratulations again on that Patriot Award.
Thank you.
Nancy, do you want to come up? Nancy Kerber is here from the Affordable Housing Trust to tell us about the Selectmen's parcel. Want to sit down?
Welcome.
Wow, was it something we said? Everybody left.
I won't take it personally.
Nancy, welcome.
Nancy Kerber, 6 Blackberry Lane, and on the Hingham Affordable Housing Trust. We have been working on an RFP for the Selectmen's parcel for looking at potential affordable housing development on that site. We issued the RFP at the end of the summer. We got responses from 4 teams, design teams. We interviewed them over the course of the fall, selected 2 that we were very interested in, interviewed with them last week, and had a vote and selected Union Studio Architects to work on the design issues involved with that project.
Cool.
They are working with Horsley Witten Group out of Sandwich, and Ladara Zola Consulting is their financial and LIP consultant.
What will be the next steps?
The next steps will be getting your approval of our decision. It's the first step. For them, in the process, is the first thing is really getting a handle on the land there, where the wetlands are, really delving into that with the engineering team, and then exploring the different ways to approach what could go on the site. What kind of mix of affordability could be there, what market rate percentage versus affordable percentage, coming up with some scenarios and how they can be financed, and then that's going there.
Do we have any kind of a time frame that we might see something? Or that they'll come back with that? Well, I really, it's exciting that this is beginning.
Yes.
And I hope part of what they're going to be coming back with is something that will deal with elder housing, senior housing, because we desperately need that.
Right.
And also, I don't think people would be too unhappy to see another veterans home in there.
I think
So-
there's an interesting mix of things that can happen, and an interesting mix of sources of funding for all of that, until we understand the landscape better, and really delve into what those funding sources are and what mix makes sense.
Will the neighbors be involved?
Absolutely. Right. I think, we need to get a better handle on what the picture is, but absolutely, they're part of the process.
Thank you, Nancy. I was able to get by the meeting for a bit, and it seemed like there were two very qualified and
The teams were
creative
everyone
groups.
who came in was spectacular, so.
So I know you said there's no time frame, but at this
Well,
point,
have a January meeting where we sort of set our sights on what all of the time frame is.
right,
They had a sort of 8 to 10 month calendar set up for their process, getting off to a little bit later start than we had hoped, but and we'll sort of, as they get into it, we'll see how that works.
so in terms of the two groups that you were listening to, those are the finalists?
Yes.
Okay, and then in terms of which group, I was wondering when you would make a decision.
We voted after we had interviewed.
Oh, good.
They were both in for a second time last week.
Okay.
We voted and selected Union Studio.
Very good.
Do we have to vote also for Union
I believe
Street?
you need to approve our decision.
Is it a vote or just us saying,
It would be a vote in that case.
okay?
So we weren't aware that you were going to be asked for a vote tonight, so we haven't written anyone up. I don't see it in our folder.
No.
So if I can just do it on the fly, I would say the vote would be to approve the Affordable Housing Trust selection of X vendor
Union Studio
for X
Architecture.
project.
Okay. So I guess I'll make a motion to approve the Housing Trust choice of the Union Studio for the Selectmen's parcel development.
Second it. Any further discussion? Would anybody in the audience like to say anything about this? Hey, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And can you just give us, maybe, not tonight, maybe give us a one-page write-up on who they are, and, because I did take a quick look up, because the other finalists, we all know.
Right.
And I had never heard of Union Street, but they look like they've done some very
interesting work.
creative.
Yeah. And that was what appealed to us about them, was the creativity they brought to the building of community within the development.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis, we'll start our budgets.
Yes.
And I see you brought a number of people.
Would you like me to introduce a few?
Yes, and I'd like them to join us.
Dennis Corcoran, Director of the Hingham Public Library. Let's see if I can round them all up. It's
Yeah, I was
like
gonna say-
herding geese. No, I'm only kidding. Ed Siegfried, who's sitting right
Come
here in the
on,
middle.
you guys
who's-
can, come on, move up, Ed, come on.
Make it all cozy, huh?
We're all so modest.
Let's see. All right, we'll get everybody settled and
And while we do that, we can also thank you publicly and wish you well on your retirement, which we're all crying about, but
Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to serve the town of Hingham. It's certainly at the pinnacle of my career. I'm so glad I got to come here in 1995. It's been
Wow.
a good number of years. I'm thrilled to have worked here. The collaboration with our colleagues in local government has been extraordinary. The level of how business is conducted in the town is extraordinary, and I've had opportunities to see other places, so I have some comparisons. So I'm leaving with a mixture of happiness and sadness. I'm looking forward to moving ahead. I admit I'm a little anxious about that, but the happiness is that I've had a good career, and a big portion of it here. So I'm very grateful to you all, to the Board of Trustees, to the staff, and very much to the town's taxpayers who've been very supportive of the library. So thank you.
no, it's been a pleasure working with you, and I've been very lucky since, actually, I got on Capitol in 2002. And then also just what you've done for the library, that you listen to everybody with your ears turned on.
Well, if I may relate a story that you always feature, and it's very short, but I remember coming before Capitol, and I had a whole complicated energy formula, and you pleasantly sat through the whole thing and then came to my office the next day and said, there's a math error in that. But you didn't embarrass me, so I really appreciated that. But I had to make amends and, send in everything else. But I was very grateful that, here I was thinking I was such a smart aleck with this stuff.
Well, you are the town's mechanical engineer.
Well,
I have to
no,
say
I don't know about that. But, a few things always come up in the budget that seem to feature around those kinds of things. But let me introduce some of the folks who are here. This is David Mehegan, who's chairman of the Board of Trustees. Charlie in the back here, who's Charlie Abbott, who's been a past, as we used to call it, president of the board, and is on our finance committee as well. Ed Siegfried, who you probably know from many different aspects of town governance, is chair of our finance committee. And I really have the pleasure of introducing somebody who you'll get to know, and I think you'll really deeply appreciate. It's Linda Harper, who is currently the assistant director, and as of January 3rd, she will be the acting director. So as the trustees move forward with a search, we are in, for my replacement, we are in very, very good hands. Our plans for succession over the last few years have really, I think, borne fruit, and the decision about a year ago to reactivate the assistant director position with a whole new set of duties that had lied dormant for, 15, 16 years, has now paid dividends. We have Linda Harper in place, and I feel very strongly there's continuity of the organization, and she's very creative and will move in different directions than some of the things I would have done, and that's the way it goes. And so I think you're going to see initiatives, even in the time period where she is acting. Maybe down the road, she won't have that title, acting, so it could be something else. And I'm very grateful to her for all her support, and as I mentioned, got a great staff, and Joan Allen is business administrator, so it's a terrific group of people. So thank you.
Could I say a word, Madam Chairman?
You may say many words.
David Mehegan, I just wanted to say that all of us at the Board of Trustees are trying to work through our grief. We're all seeing grief counselors individually and as a group. I think it's a little bit like the way the country must have felt in 1945 when Roosevelt died. You're still alive, I know, Dennis. But when President Roosevelt died, and no one could remember when there had been another president or could imagine what it would be like without Roosevelt, and thought, no, this is not possible. I think we had a few minutes of that feeling when when Dennis first told me of his plan. But it is very true that he has spent not only many years over the many years of his career, but over the last year or two, working very hard to create a structure and a staff system at the library that will carry on in the interim period as we seek a new director. And although Linda Harper is acting director, there's nothing acting about it. I mean, there's no theater involved. This is the real thing, as she knows. And all of you who come to the library will say, well, I know Linda Harper, because she's been there for, I believe it's 18 years. Is that right, 18?
Came in 1998.
1998.
Wow.
And she's this dynamic character who's never in the same place for very long. She's always moving, full of ideas, and we're very lucky to have her. Very glad that she'll be in that office. It's not a corner office. It's a sort of a rooftop office. So we're very sorry to lose Dennis. He's been a fantastic director, as we all know, and making the library into really what it is, which is not just a place to take out books, but it's the sort of central cultural institution. It's a real cultural center in town, a center of education, a center of community activity, and we've a lot of the growth of this great institution, really famous on the South Shore and esteemed and used by other communities. A lot of that has to do with the efforts that Dennis has put in over the last 19 years. And although it's hard to see him go, we wish him well in his future endeavors. And but we're going to. I'm sure you're going to scrutinize his numbers tonight.
We're not going to let him off
closely
easy,
as you always,
anyway.
as closely as you always do.
Let me add one thing to what you've said, David. I think the greatest success, you can measure it very easily. Have you ever tried to find a parking place at the library? It is always, no matter when, difficult to find a parking place, which I think that's the highest compliment.
It's amazing when you have a couple of big programs going on. We actually have learned to triage these at this point from experience. But you have a garden club meeting, a class of lifelong learning students, and a story hour, and it's crazy. I mean, we fill up Levitt Street, and the parking lot, and people circling. The poor guy or woman who's coming just to drop off the book or pick up a book, they're caught in the maelstrom. But it is a tribute to our success, and hopefully someday we address the parking issue. And I think it is something that is on the horizon in the capital plan.
Thank you.
There have been times when it's been difficult to get a quorum for Board of Trustees meetings because Wednesday is independent movie night.
And the trustees are circling in the parking lot.
Fortunately, several of them live within walking distance, and so we've been safe. But we really appreciate all that Dennis has done over the years, and really cannot thank him enough.
Okay, one last torture session for your budget.
Okay.
All right, well, let me start the budget off for Dennis by drawing your attention to page 112 of your budget books. I'll give you a brief summary of the numbers and then let Dennis get into the details. The library's fiscal 2015 revised budget was $1,530,590. The department requested as a base budget $1,605,191. They requested an additional series of expenses of $8,381. I have recommended all of those for a total town administrator recommendation of $1,613,572. The increase year over year from 16 to 15 is $82,982 for a 5.42% increase. And while I will take to heart David's comments about being as tough as I could be on Dennis, unfortunately, he did not give me much opportunity. These numbers were pretty straightforward, and these requests are extremely reasonable. So, thank you, Dennis, once again for making my job, like you've always done, so very easy.
Thank you. Thank you, Ted. If you'd like some comments on this, as Ted mentioned, the budget request for 16, the total is $1,613,572. Year over year, the salary lines increased by about 3.88%. But the 15 presentation, I think, doesn't include the $8,200 in equity adjustments that were attributable to some job reclassifications that occurred over the past couple of years. As you recall, we had some retirements a year ago, and that gave us the opportunity to recast some of our hierarchy, and in the course of doing that, we did incur some equity adjustments that were attributable to that. The 16 budget also includes the collective bargaining negotiated general wage increases and step increases in the amount of $10,800. So if you kind of looked at those increases and adjusted sort of a net increase for that, it would be closer to 2.3 on the personnel budget. The expense budget, which is probably not as exciting as chasing geese, but I'll go over that. The 16 expense budget increased bottom line year over year by what seems like a very large amount of 12.3%. So I think that merits a few explanatory comments. One of the things is we found that our air filter maintenance in the building is not that good. We've been having some issues with units having clogged filters, that sort of thing. So we have moved to a quarterly plan, which surprisingly is pretty labor intensive. So it ends up adding $2,750 in additional HVAC expenses. The next thing that we did that perhaps increases the budget a little bit in the expense area that we feel is really tough and beyond our control is the natural gas and electricity costs. We use the town's formula to create those costs, and so we ended up with a combined, I believe, 6.2% increase in the funding of electrical and natural gas in this particular request over FY 2015. So that's kind of boosted things a little bit. Again, the one that always concerns us, as you know, is natural gas, and I'm hoping that the new boilers help keep that under control. Another initiative that shows up in the expense budget for the first time, there's telephone and alarm services lines. You probably have heard this story, but the town's we're anticipating a change in town practice in fire alarm monitoring. This won't simply affect the library, will affect other departments as well. And we're looking to make alternate arrangements for that service. So essentially this means contracting out to obtain the alarm monitoring. So there's some startup costs involved, about $2,290 to add a dedicated phone line, some monitoring equipment, and a service agreement. Essentially, the net cost from year to year with whatever increases occur as a result of inflation would be about $1,500 for that service. But that's something you've never seen in our budget before. Another item that we're now breaking out because we're seeing initiatives in this area, which we're calling computer service agreements, and they probably appear in other people's budgets, other departments' budgets. For us, it's a new line item where we added we've asked for $2,000. And so what we want to do is highlight for you as these things occur that they are occurring, and not sort of having them embedded in some other area of the budget. But they include things like the licensing costs for the wireless access points in the facility. They're identical to what's in the town hall. The beauty of those is that they can be managed by the town's IT department from just about anywhere. So we're real happy. We think we're saving some cost in terms of our staff troubleshooting these items when they can be handled by our wonderful IT staff who we couldn't survive without. We have some other things like we have digital signage in the building. There's a licensing cost associated with that. But these are all good, but I think you should know that they exist. So, you may see these types of fees or licensing for software services appearing in people's budgets, and certainly the library is one where you might see that. The new requests were largely furniture and equipment. These are kinds of things that really are, for the most part, replacements for things that we do. I mean, we needed a steel map file. If you can imagine what that is, it's this bureau-like thing with lots of drawers to put maps in. And we had a wooden one, which wasn't very good, and very quickly the town's consultants that drew up the historical master plan said, you really got to get rid of that. And we didn't get rid of it for 2 or 3 years, feeling that, we should try to get some more use out of this. But at this point, it's time to comply with their wishes and do it right so that the documents are kept in an acid-free environment. Book carts, as Linda can tell you, as head of circulation, these things wear out, break, and we need to set up a little schedule to replace them. So again, that's a request, $700 for book carts. We're asking to add a study carrel and a chair for $1,900. There's always a shortage of these. People still want a private place or semi-private place to work, and every time we've added one, they quickly used. So this is another effort to sort of keep up with that demand. We're also asking for $900 to replace damaged chairs. So they're about getting to be 14, 15 years old, and some of these things do need to be replaced. The equipment items are pretty simple. Our custodial workforce is looking for a floor burnisher and a large commercial wet-dry vac, and those total $1,381. Nothing too exotic in that, but it does end up creating a budget that's at $1,613,000, $572. And if I could, I'd come back in a minute, please, and ask as many questions as you want about the budget. But I want to tell you, get this out, because I think it's important. There are some metrics that are useful, I think, to hear about. Total library attendance hovered at the 250,000 mark last year in FY14, and we're thinking it's going to exceed that in 15. So that's a pretty healthy number of visitors. They're real numbers. We can calculate them because we have these little electronic devices that know when you walk in the door, and it's amazing because you got to think that we're really it's a voluntary kind of transaction when you walk in. No one's saying you have to come. So I'm very proud of the fact that we get 250,000 people almost every year now coming through those doors. In 14 we had our programs have taken off phenomenally. We had 213 programs for children with 5,218 children attending. We had 312 adult programs in the same year with 7,128 people attending. So if you think about it on a 12-year, divided by 12, that's people coming to, this is only library activities. This is not other groups using the library. That about 1,000 people per month come for library-sponsored activities. It's pretty good track record. One thing I think you know about, because Madam Chairman, because you have been a volunteer at the library, we have 104 volunteers who contributed 6,246 hours in fiscal year 14. So it's extraordinary. We have just fewer than 14,000 cardholders, which I'm very proud of, and those are real numbers. We purged the folks who've been in the cemetery for a number of years, So or people
they don't borrow books anymore.
No, they stopped borrowing. But so they're pretty real numbers. Somebody's been there in the last couple of years to be in that figure. A couple of other things that we did that I think are important. We managed to paint the building, the trim, last summer. It looks a lot nicer. I mentioned the boiler project, which was a monumental effort. It was kind of like the elephant giving birth, and we finally got it done, and we're still tweaking some of those things. The trustees have launched this Library Futures Task Force, which is designed to look at what libraries are going to be doing, at our library in particular, in the coming years, and developing appropriate responses to that. And they've acquired a tremendous amount of data from a survey that was run, and they're working through that now, and they will be bringing forth recommendations in their long-range plan and other activities in the budget. So we never sit still. So if you have any questions about the budget specifically, please. Please
I'll
ask.
ask one, and then I'll turn it over to Paul. I really applaud you for breaking out the new categories, because as you move more and more to a technology-based, the unintended consequences of that's the good news, but the unintended consequences are the licenses for whatever the media is, plus the electric.
Correct.
And the gas, but especially the electric. So this helps picture.
Yeah, I think it does, and they're relatively new for us, where we have not had these costs showing before. So I think it is important for all of the budget makers and the taxpayers to understand how these things get into a budget. But it is the way of the industry right now. So.
And the other thing, I can attest to the furniture needing replacement.
Oh, you sat on a bed.
Dennis waits till it gets threadbare.
Yeah.
Not just a little threadbare. This is like serious threadbare. So
yes,
thank
I'm
you
not a
for
Yankee,
that.
but
You are thrifty.
Thrifty.
And let's see, what's a good word?
No,
You reuse.
Thrifty.
Thrifty.
We'll just
Stay with thrifty.
Okay, Paul.
Dennis, I also want to thank you for your service. Unfortunately for me, I've only had a short time to have the pleasure of working with you, and something tells me that you won't be far away, and hopefully that you'll be with us not only in spirit, but also assisting us down the line.
Any way I can help, Paul, I'm available, and I have to say, we haven't known each other very long, but I haven't had the pleasure of working with you over an extended period of time, but I think it would have been a very good relationship.
I feel the same.
Yeah.
So my only question, you may have already answered it, is I was looking ahead, and you said you have a Library Futures Committee. Is there, and it may be premature, so there's no pressure to say, but I was just wondering what insights, while we still have you here, what insights do you have as to what the future holds for learning and with the evolving technologies? I just was curious.
I'm going to let David jump in here, too,
Sure.
help me out, but from my perspective, there's a lot going on that sort of falls outside of what I think people traditionally think of a library as, book-centric. And believe me, we're in the business of books for the long haul, so don't worry about that. But I think what's changing is how the library's become, I don't really like to call it a community center, but because that has all kinds of connotations too, but I think it's really the crossroads in the community where people from all walks of life come together to enjoy the facility, and some people are there for lifelong learning, some people are there for recreational kinds of things, but what we've seen is tremendous growth in these non-traditional areas for us. I mean, we're moving into quasi-teaching educational roles as time goes on because of all the electronic devices that people now need to access resources. They do need help, and the staff has really come up to speed. I witnessed them today, having a training session so that they can stay just ahead of the curve. Of course, there's that 14 or 15-year-old who comes in and
Knows everything.
And knows everything.
Yeah.
So we're racing to stay ahead, but there is a segment of the population that needs assistance, and our staff is really doing a great job with that. So there's a lot of change afoot, and what we're doing is trying to expand people's understanding and perhaps definition of what a library is. So David, let me turn that to you.
I would just add that the Futures Committee is a group of trustees and staff members who are just trying to look at and think about the future and the ways that libraries and library demands are changing. Now, all of us know how they are changing. I mean, I think in my sleep, I could go in the Levitt Street door and walk right up to the card catalog and pull out the doors and find the books. And I remember when the LP collection was right around the corner near that entrance. Those of us who've been using libraries all of our lives know how they have changed. A great deal of change has happened, and that change has not come to an end. Part of the implications of that will be changes in the way we use space. We have an unusual building. I like to think of it as sort of a splice of a bicycle and a camel. It's two buildings put together, and it works wonderfully well. But we do know that over time, the way that the space is used, and the way that the space we have, the place we have, interacts with the needs that we have is going to change. And we've spent a lot of time in the task force looking at what other libraries around the country have done, the way that they've used their finances, and the way that the public wants to use libraries. What the public wants and is interested in is a matter of great importance to us, which is why we undertook this online survey this year, which has yielded some very interesting insights, and we're going to be, there will be a presentation at the next the next library trustee meeting about the results of the survey, and those results, and some of them, as I say, are interesting. You'd be surprised, young people do like books. And people do like the things that were always there. Libraries as places to go and think and study and have quiet. But people also want services the way that they never had before. The All-Day Lifelong Learning Program, for example, has become a very important program. And there may be more things like that. That's what the public wants. So what will happen is that considering all of these things that we have learned through the survey and through the reading we've done, we'll be passing that forward to the next iteration of the long-range plan. The long-range plan ends in 2015, and we'll be going forward to write the new plan. And we're not going to let any grass grow between our toes or any moss grow. We're going to continue to be, we hope, right at the cutting edge of public libraries, and continue to be what the community wants and really what the region wants. So that's really what the Futures Task Force is all about.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you to all the trustees.
Yes. Yeah. And Dennis, I want to personally thank you for working with Adrian and myself on the bookstore. And he never, all the crazy ideas we had, Dennis always patiently listened to them, and we did get to do some of them, but thank you for being so supportive of that. It's a joy to work there.
And thank you for all your help in that area. We couldn't do it without you and Adrian.
And the rest of the volunteers. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
And apologies to whoever followed us. We took too long.
Bruce and the Board of Health. Welcome.
Thank you.
Introduce yourself for the probably 3 people that don't know you.
Bruce Catman, I'm the Executive Health Officer for the Town of Hingham Board of Health.
And we'll start Bruce's budget off on page 90 of your budget books. And the Board of Health budget, I'll give you some background overview. The fiscal 2015 budget was $325,504. The department requested $315,300 of a base budget, $8,908 of a additional request. I've recommended all of that for a total administrative recommended budget of $324,208. It is a $1,296 decrease over last year and a 40.4% decrease. And I will turn it over to Bruce to give you the details.
Well, excuse me, I'm fighting a cold today, so bear with me. The main additional funding that I want would be for adding 5 hours of time to the health agent sanitarian position. It's well documented that the economy's changed. There's much more going on. We've also added different things to our workload, such as the recycling rules and regulations, which require all businesses to provide 2 dumpsters, one for trash and one for recycling, monitoring that. We also got all of the rubbish haulers in town that come to town to get licensed by us to offer recycling to residents that hire them. So where there was little to no recycling being done in the town, now there's a lot going on. And you might notice it if you go into a restaurant, not a restaurant, but say get a quick bite to eat, and you'll see a recycling receptacle and a trash receptacle. So we're trying to make it part of our daily routine to make sure that we get people to pay attention to recycling. Obviously, Randy Sylvester has done a good job up at the transfer station, but we're adding a whole new layer on top of that. We also spent, and continuing with that, excuse me, all of this became possible through a grant that we had from the DEP, and that allowed us to add 10 hours a week to the health agent to do this. Well, the grant's ending in the beginning of next year, and we won't have that 10 hours anymore. So what we're asking for is just another 5 hours to make it a full-time position.
Go ahead.
To pick up these additional responsibilities and to keep up with the workload right now.
I would say I made the recommendation because I saw it much more as a level services budget. They were funded through a state grant. Those are critical activities in the department. And we made such great progress with the Board of Health and the Sewer Department on the fats, oils, and grease regulations. I know that both Bruce and the individual that he's looking for the extra hours did a lot of work on that area. I don't want any backsliding on that. I know the board doesn't either, because the citizens were very vocal about, as you'd expect, sewer backups are not something that people are going to tolerate for at all. So I commend Bruce for working with the sewer department on that, and again, that was the basis for my recommendation.
And that's, you took the words right out of my mouth. I want to thank Bruce and Randy Sylvester for the wonderful collaboration, and it's an example of what we can do between the sewer department and your department on really nailing the fog problem that was here and staying right on top of it.
And we have to stay right on top of it too, and that's what we're attempting to try to complete.
And Hingham is growing, and you all do so many more inspections now.
Yes.
Than you ever did before.
Yeah.
That these hours are small compared to what you're doing.
Title V came into being a number of years ago, and that was directly related to the economy because of the selling of homes and transfer of real estate. So about 30% of all those sales we deal with directly in getting upgraded septic systems. So as the economy goes up, our workload goes up.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Let me just briefly, Bruce, thank you. I also don't want to miss the opportunity to thank you and your staff for being so helpful to us and pledging to be even more so in the future with a coalition that we just formed. We met last night with the Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition that's forming in the town. Your office, as well as many other people in the town, fire department, police, etc., all been there in the beginning helping us get started, so thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Super. Thank you so much.
Okay.
That was easy.
It was. Have a good night.
All right, your next budget is the assessor's budget. It appears on page 9, and I'll be taking this budget for you today. The assessors won't be joining us. Rick Nowlin's mother passed away a couple days ago. Our condolences go out to Rick and his family. Again, a somewhat straightforward budget. There are additional requests here, orientating you from the prior years. The budget for the Assessor's Department for fiscal 2015 was $348,688. The 2016 department request was for $297,833, with an additional request of $16,500 in personal services. I have recommended that amount for a total budget of $314,333. This represents a $34,355 decrease over the prior year and a 9.85% decrease year over year. The decrease is essentially our dividend of the work we did several years ago to bring the assessment process to take the assessment process from inside to outside. We outsourced it. and we brought in a company that not only did the assessment, also provided the software, which the third year we owned. So we made our final payment last year, and that's where you're seeing a decrease in the budget. We've also shifted personnel a lot in here, and if you go back, even with this additional personnel, the department isn't anywhere close to where it was 4 years ago in terms of its personnel commitments. And they're just having a struggle to keep up with the work, specifically towards gearing up for the triannual revaluation, and that's an aspect where they have to go out and look at every single property, and they just can't wait until the third year, so they're going to split that up evenly over the next 3 years. I can say that the feedback I'm getting from citizens and certainly from the people in the building is that we have a new assessor's office. We really do. The last few years, they've really turned it around from a place that may not have been as pleasant to go in if you were a taxpayer. Always difficult when we're talking about taxes, but the feedback we're getting is that they're much more approachable, and I think that all goes to Rick and the people who work in the office. So I wanted to give them credit for that.
This is great news, and it's a great group of people to work with, and our Board of Assessors are also the 3 people we have there: Mike Shaughnessy, Greg Hall, and Hal Goldstein are very, very good to work with. So thank you. This is easy.
Just
Paul?
just a couple of quick questions. So when we outsource the assessing function, and that's, you said we made the last payment on that, is that obviously something that we'll be funding in the future?
So we had 2 issues hit us 4 years ago. Our assessor left, and so we had to hire a new assessor. And at the same point in time, we had to make a decision about a computer system. We were using an antiquated computer system. It was an old state-sponsored program, and so it was a really, and the third thing to make it a perfect storm, I guess, was that we had to do a revaluation that year. So new assessor, new computer system, new revaluation, which is a triannual thing, and it's fairly significant for any assessor to go through, certainly a new one. I got to give the credit to the Board of Assessors for really focusing in that year and doing a lot more than just showing up to meetings a couple times a month. The decision was made with Capital and Advisory to go to a new computer system, but by going to a new computer system, we also brought the company that gave us the computer system Vision in to actually handle the revaluation. So they're the ones that go out and look at all the individual properties and make the appropriate assessments that are reviewed by Rick and the Board of Assessors. That was a $120,000 package that we paid for over 3 years, which we essentially paid for by dropping 2 personnel positions within the department. And so we bought it without increasing the budget, and now we have the third payment just dropping off. So like I said, it's a pretty positive step for us. And I get the feedback, like I said, from people that they're getting a little bit more attention from the company that we send out.
So, and I apologize, but so just so I understand it, we've made the payment, they've gone out and done the assessments, I guess, in this 3-year period. So what happens in the future?
We will continue to pay them, and there are line items in the budget for going out and doing field work. You can see in line item further down the page, 5309, there's a $67,000 line item for revaluation services. Okay. So this is the fee we pay to the company to send out their data collectors. Previously, we had our own data collectors, and they went out, and we paid them a salary and benefits. We don't do that anymore. We pay the company directly.
Those are 2 positions that don't exist anymore?
Yeah, one of them was Rick Nellen. He was our data collector. Now he's our assessor.
Oh, good. Well,
Are we looking at a yearly figure of about $67,000?
Correct.
On a go forward with whatever inflation comes along?
I would say you're looking at something like that, correct? I mean, we'll go out to bid periodically to see if we can challenge those numbers, but they're going to be in that range.
Which is good, because you're not paying benefits here.
Well, I'm just looking at this budget and seeing that they're still assessing the town because the tax bills are still going out. And if I go back 4 or 5 years, the budget was higher. So we're getting the same level of service, if not better, from what I'm hearing anecdotally, for less money. And that's the kind of restaurant I like to go out to. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Bear Cove Park.
Bear Cove Park appears on page 37 of your budget. This is always one of our most complicated budgets. We have our chairman, Bob Small.
My name is Bob Smaldone. Yeah, I'm always amazed at how much is done with so little. And I think we were given a $65 increase for the year.
Well, let me orientate you on the numbers because I know the press is here and they're very anxious to hear this. In 15, the budget was the current year budget is $24,722. The department request was $24,787. There was no additional request. I approved the entire department budget request of $24,787. And as Bob is correct, there's a $65 increase. All of that is in personal services, and a 0.26% increase year over year. And I think Bob said it perfectly when he said it's amazing what they do with such little money.
I don't see any capital requests. And is the truck that Scotty has still working?
It's still working.
And?
And I guess it's going to continue to still be working. But there's always things that come up that are typically covered within our budget. I mean, we haven't gone out of the budget at this point, or over the budget, I guess I should say. I'm not quite sure how old that truck is, and I think it was a hand-me-down.
They're always hand-me-downs?
Right. So, I mean, if something happens, there may be another.
I had spoken to Scott, and he thought that he would manage through with it for another year, but we'll keep our eyes open as soon as DPW has a vehicle that, how DPW takes their vehicles through their own organization. By the time it gets ready to go to another one, sometimes it's not always, worthwhile. But we were able to get one over there, I think 3 years ago.
I don't know when it was,
but it was a few years back, and
it was.
I have to ask Scott periodically because he doesn't like to complain. So
never does. But it'd be nice if we took care of him.
Correct. So we keep an eye on it, and if a vehicle opens up, we'll certainly move it over.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
All right, Bob. So I noticed you didn't have any additional requests, and I haven't worked on a budget with you before. And is that something that's happened the last few years, or is this just a unique?
It's my third year on the committee, and we typically, I mean, I'm just amazed at how much is done. I'm repeating myself with so little because there's a lot of ingenuity, I think, that takes place where beg, borrowing, and stealing. There's also some situations where we have a Friends of Bear Cove Park committee, so sometimes some of the other expenses can be taken care of. Some of the capital things, like there's some benches that were added through that committee. So it really hasn't been an issue at this point.
Well, that's great. I certainly applaud you in terms of the budget. I just don't know you well enough, and I want to make sure you feel comfortable if there's things you need for us to consider, because we do rely on you to point it out to us, even if we may or may not be able to fund it or all of it, but I know you'll do what's best.
I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying I know you'll do what's best, and respect whatever you put down. But
I missed the meeting this week. I was out of town, and I think the one thing that he was looking for, Scotty, was a snow blower. But it still may be something that we can fund out of what we already have. So I think we're okay at this point.
Okay.
I'm going to share Paul's concern, because for as long as I've been doing budgets, which is a long time now,
okay,
I've always worried that this budget is too small for the amount of use that the park gets, for the amount that the citizens are demanding. So, don't be shy the next time around.
Well, what I received this time was that it was supposed to be a flatline budget, so that's what we did. So I will let the committee know that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Fire department.
It's nice to want somebody wants to give you more money.
Welcome, Chief.
I'll bet you this budget's a little different, though.
Stay 1 minute. Just stay 1 minute.
Okay.
For marked off Fire Chief 37.
You can't take that truck. He's not gonna want it.
No, no,
You're going to give him?
no.
Oh, wait a minute. Are you going to give him the quint?
No, we're actually going to put a plow on it and start using that to plow Main Street as well.
Okay.
No, seriously, depending on the actions of capital outlay, we've put in for a pickup truck this year, or next year, and we may have a vehicle that you could use. That's all I have to say.
We're not talking about the other truck, right?
No, we're not talking about the truck I just put out. That's
Mark, for the board to know, has just released a vehicle from his fleet, and I wouldn't let it go over there, because
no,
you'd spend more money than you would buying a new one fixing that old vehicle.
It's not appropriate for that anyways. But in all seriousness, there's a possibility we'll have a pickup truck for you. So
if I could orientate you to the fire department budget, which appears in your budget books on page 52. The fire department budget for fiscal 2015 is revised at $4,823,043. The department request for 2016 was $4,859,286. There were additional requests of $132,476. I've reduced that request to $118,000 for a total town administrator recommended budget of $4,977,286. This represents $154,243 over the prior year budget, or a 3.2% increase. And I'll turn it over to Mark.
Okay, Mark, you want to take us through it?
would you like a brief summary of what's happened in the last year? Or?
Sure.
Okay. First of all, before we do get into the budget, I want to very sincerely thank the deputy for basically doing it. He's the person that crunches the numbers, and I'm the one that presents the budget and winds up looking good. But Bobby is the one that really does the budget for the fire department, and he needs to get credit for that. I know the fire departments traditionally in this country do not do well with grant money, but I am pleased to let you know that we just received a grant through emergency planning that's going to allow us to buy 2 tablets and a trailer for our ATV. As you know, we have an ATV that we recently purchased with a grant. We use it for special events. The 4th of July parade, it was used at Christmas in the Square this year, and difficult to get around if you need to take it to South Hingham or who knows where. So through some grant money, we'll have a trailer for that. And again, a grant coming into the fire department is a big deal because we don't get a lot of grants. I continue to work on the purchase of the 2 fire engines. We were hoping to wrap that up in December, but that may be January. That's proceeding forward. The feasibility study for the 2 new stations is proceeding very nicely. I will tell you that the Dorr and Whittier, the company that is doing our feasibility study, has come back with some initial reports, and the renovations that they're recommending are substantial. Both of those stations, as you know, really have had nothing done to them since 1942. We went through this with Tom Carey, so I don't want to repeat myself, but they are recommending substantial additions to the buildings and substantial renovations. We'd like to start with Station 2. We have the asset committee has determined that Station 2 is the appropriate location for it, and the architects have determined that the site location is large enough to do what we want to do. Interestingly enough, when those stations were built, all 3 fire stations in 1942, the Hingham Fire Department responded to a total of 311 emergencies for that year. We're now responding to over 4,000. Those 2 outside stations were built with the intention, when they were built and staffed in 1942, there were 2 people in them at any one time. They were built with the understanding that that would probably move out to 3 people, and it did in the early 1950s. And until really the 1990s, there was only 3 people assigned to that. Current plans in the new renovations, if they're approved, is to make these stations adequate for 6 people on duty. I don't foresee that in the future, but we're thinking that the renovations need to have a 50-year cycle, and so that would be an appropriate number to build these stations out to, and There's going to be a lot, it's going to take a lot to do that.
Do they have, Mark, do you have any, like, raw estimates for even
I
Station
wouldn't-
2? It's got to be $1 million
Yeah,
plus.
they're way too premature to
They're
you know, they just,
considerable.
they didn't even give us numbers. They just talked about them in the meeting, and I don't think it would be worthwhile putting them out there yet.
Meaning they're big. I got it.
Yeah, they are big, and I'll be honest with you, Irma, you know, the plan, they're thinking, and I think they're correct, their thinking is that, or I was surprised at how much bigger they're recommending these buildings be out to be. But now that we're doing hazmat, EMS, you know, Ebola, all these various things that have been added to the fire service, technical rescue, you know the routine. There's just a lot more required, and firefighters today, physical fitness is a very, very big thing. They have to be handicap accessible. Those are issues that we didn't have to deal with. There's just a lot of things that fire stations need today that was never anticipated when you were doing 300 calls a year. We're now doing almost 4,000. Plus all, and that's only emergency calls. That's not all the routine stuff that we do every day. Inspections and special projects, et cetera, et cetera. So it's going to be quite a project. We continue to monitor the situation in the town forest. Work continues on the possibility of a fourth station. I think the primary thinking there right now is to get some land locked down somewhere in the south end of town. As you're aware, in 1969, the town purchased property because there was a need recognized in 69 for a firehouse. And that land was since sold by the town, but if the building in the south part of town continues, we need to lock down a piece of property that's appropriate for that fourth station. You can always find property, but it has to be in the right location. We've made considerable progress on the townwide radio system, and you know this has been a bugaboo of mine. I was able to announce last year at the advisory committee meeting, but I don't think I could do it here. We now finally have every town department on the same radio spectrum, so everybody can talk to everybody. And that was almost a 10-year project. I'd also like you to keep in mind the fire department brings in approximately $1 million in revenue. We had actually a very productive meeting today with Aquarian Water, nothing to do with the purchase, but they came in to review their emergency plans with us. Betty was there, police chief, Randy Sylvester, myself, and the deputy. Was there anybody else? I don't think so. One thing that came out of that, Irma, which I had remembered when Mass American Water, I believe it was Mass American Water owned it. The Aquarian Water has a reverse 911 contract with a company. Hingham typically uses the contract or the Plymouth County Sheriff. That whole funding mechanism was an extreme question, I think, 2 years ago, and it almost got canceled. But currently we use the Plymouth County Sheriff for reverse 911 phone calls. Aquarian Water has a contract with a company as well. And when it was Mass American Water and I was the emergency management director, we had a memorandum of understanding with them that in the event that we needed that, we could use it. So it's just another nice ticket in our pocket that if for some reason the sheriff's system isn't available or it's busy sending out 911 calls in another part of the county, we're not going to have a backup system to it. So currently I have one firefighter paramedic at the Mass Fire Academy, expected to graduate in January. I have 4 additional candidates. They haven't started on the job yet because we don't bring them in until just before they start. They are scheduled, firefighter paramedics. They are scheduled to begin in March, and we have 1 opening. We were waiting for the new list to be established by Civil Service, which just got established in December. Pleased to report that on the expense side of the budget, I'm happy with where we are. Dennis talked a little bit about it today. The fire alarm system, the project to downsize the fire alarm system is not moving as fast as I'd like it to, but it has been reduced almost 50%. Yeah, I think that's
really good.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. But unfortunately, it costs money to take it out, and money that I have to balance between a lot of other things, as you know, but it is going slower than I anticipated. We are making good progress with the four-town dispatch, but there's still work to be done, especially now that, and Bobby's done the lion's share of it, especially with the fiber optic network that's going to be put in. I think actually the work has actually started now. A fiber line that leaves dispatch, goes to Hull, Cohasset, Norwell, and then back and circles back around in Hingham. It's a, what do they call that?
Self-healing redundant loop.
It's a redundant loop, so if it gets cut in any one location, it feeds backwards, so that's going to make a big improvement on things there. And there's still some work to be done, especially if we do change software vendors.
Your overtime looks like it's kind of stabilizing, at least this year, and then in the forward-looking. And is that because we moved more bodies to real bodies?
Correct.
Good.
Correct. That's the 4 people
Good.
that basically would be going to the academy in
Great.
March. We're
'Cause
still
that
very,
Go
we're
ahead.
still very tight on it. And probably, in all honesty, if there's anything that gives me a headache about the job, it's managing that overtime number. It's always a challenge. It's a real challenge, so.
Take them through the personnel changes?
So I'm requesting a second daytime deputy be funded for the fire department. In my 10 years as chief, we have not accomplished, both myself and the deputy have not been able to accomplish all the plans and projects that we'd like to. The position is going to cover training. It's going to cover EMS administration, succession planning. You heard a little bit about that with Dennis. We in the fire department have an issue with succession planning and special projects. I actually going into the chief, just on special projects alone, going into the chief's job, we were immediately confronted with the renovations to the central fire station. We're now spending many hours on the Shrek, the dispatch center, many hours now on planning for this renovations to Station 2 and 3, and possibly the 4th station, and this has nothing to do with the everyday operation of the department. I did a little thinking through the history of daytime employees for the fire department, and from when the department was established until 1975, there was one daytime employee, and that was the chief. And in 1975, a part-time secretary, 20 hours a week, was hired. So the chief ran the department, one daytime employee. In 1979, Catherine Peasley was moved to days. So in 1979, the department had 2 daytime employees, plus at that point, a full-time secretary. It wasn't until 2000 that the 3rd daytime employee came on board, or 4th daytime employee, depending on how you look at it, including the administrative assistant. And that was when I moved, when Bill Johnson was chief, when I moved from a shift to days. So we've been very, very scarce on appointing daytime employees to the department, but there's just too much now there to manage it to one person, especially when I have to put Bobby on all these special projects, or I have to do them. And you have a list of, there is a justification. I don't want to go through all the various things, but there is a justification in your package on additional responsibilities. But it's just time for a second administrator.
On page 58 of your budget book.
Yeah, are some of these things that the deputy does today?
Some of them are things that I try to do today. Things have become so complicated with the amount of special projects that's being done. I don't think that time commitment was ever really considered. Again, it's the unintended consequences of decisions, but once a decision's made to head down a certain path, there's a certain amount of work that has to be done.
Is that because moving to Shrek, some of the work shifted from dispatch
Yeah,
to
Shrek's been a
police and fire?
big part of it for us because that's been an ongoing project since 2006 for me. when we started with this. The biggest part of it is getting the CAD system to work properly. And the initial CAD setup and the initial time commitment to that was a 6-month commitment to be able to do that. And part of the thing is that we're talking about possibly changing CAD programs in the SHREC. I'm anticipating that that's going to be another 6 months of work.
I'm
going to just interrupt for a second. I got to, call out Bob on this because, I've sat here and watched these two guys work on the regional dispatch center, and I've talked to my fellow managers too about it. I don't think many of us could find any fire or police personnel in any of the 4 towns that put the time and energy in that Bob put in to make this thing work. And if it's a success now, which I do believe it is a success, it's resting heavily on his shoulders. I mean, there's other people who helped too, but he did tireless work, and not just for Hingham. His work applied to everybody across the system. So I think when we talk about special projects, that was a little bit more than a special project. And like he said, it's been going on for 6 years. So thank you, Bob.
At some point, thank you, Bob. At some point, if the second deputy comes in, will there be like a balancing of workload?
Absolutely. I remember taking a management course, because it will depend on who eventually gets appointed in that position. I remember taking a management course years ago about how important it is to identify in your manager's strong points and weak points. And that's one of the reasons we have such a good relationship. Because Bobby has his strong points in finance and various things. I have strong points. I'd like to think on more of the technical side, the operations side, the emergency management side, and we're just a great fit. When that third person comes online, again, we're going to have to look at where his talents are, and it's going to depend on who gets hired as well, where his talents are, and then we'll just decide, or the chief will decide who does what and when.
Do you see this as being somebody who's here already, an
I would
internal
certainly
candidate?
like it to be an internal candidate, yes. Yes.
Okay.
And just one more thing. We have a couple of very small changes in your figures on the first page of the numbers under natural gas. Not a big deal, but based on the fuel and worksheet, that needs to go from 676 to 834. I almost had to mention it. And then one more thing that...
We don't do changes here, though.
I know.
Mark will tell us, and I'll provide you with updated sheets later. So
I am asking for we are asking for a $3,000 increase that's not shown in your worksheets. And again, I'm going to let the deputy explain that, and I think when he gives you the explanation, I'm sure you'll agree with it.
Not all good ideas actually come out of the corner office. In meeting with our...
He's talking about Mark in the corner office, not me, right?
That's true.
The Pentagon.
We have a very strong EMS component to the Hingham Fire Department. We have 4 good EMS coordinators that work with myself on running the EMS side of the fire department program. And one of our EMS coordinators, firefighter Jacinto, was talking to me about the number of automatic defibrillators that we have in the town. The town has a considerable number of these now. And as we go around and have our business in different town buildings, we go and we occasionally look at them, because in the fire service, AEDs are something that naturally matches up with us. Like, we look at fire extinguishers, we look at the little yellow tag on the fire extinguisher to check the date and stuff like that. And one of the things that we started to realize is that, since the town has 8 different locations and 8 different defibrillators, that maybe it'd be better to bring these under one umbrella. If you run a department that you're not always involved in EMS, you tend to know the thing is on the wall, but you don't check the expiration dates for the pads. You don't know if the battery's good or the battery's dying. And right now, the fire department coordinates purchase of these so that we try to make sure that any AED in the town actually works, or automatic electric defibrillation, works with our LifePak 15s, which are carried on the ambulance. There are adapters that we can carry to adapt to different things, but it helps us if people that want to buy these buy them through us, so that we can make sure that we have one system that works for the whole town. So
my EMS committee came to me and said, is it possible for us to take over the maintenance of these defibrillators that we have in the town? And I said, I don't know, it's not in the budget, but let me see what the idea is. So we put the package together. I did talk to Ted about this. He said it sounded like a really good idea. And at a department heads meeting today, I was talking to some of the department heads where these are located, and they're like, this would be really good because we don't even think of them. So for a small amount of money added to our EMS budget of about $3,000, it would allow us to do the battery replacements and the pad replacements that go with the electronic defibrillators.
These are the town-owned.
Town-owned ones.
And over the long run, even though it's $3,000 more in this budget, and I'm not sure where I'll find the $3,000 in the other budgets, but eventually we will, it's a wash. It just means they're going to do it instead of the recreation department. Betty could take care of the one in this building, someone take care of the one in the library. You know, really is, and Betty's
sense.
top-notch, but, you know, I'd rather have Mark or Bob or one of these guys managing that AED, so.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you saved one life with one of them,
Well,
more than pays for it.
And just as a public announcement, people, you know, there's a lot of buildings in Hingham that have defibrillators, privately owned. And a lot of those defibrillators were mounted on the walls 4 or 5 years ago, and they haven't been looked at since. So you really need to, you know, if you're a private entity and you have one, you need to look at it. We would certainly would not be afraid to send someone up and look at it for you, make some recommendations on replacements or whatever. But pads have expiration dates, batteries have expiration dates, and I'm really concerned that there may be equipment out there that no longer works. You know, fire extinguishers get inspected every year. Smoke detector batteries get changed. But defibrillators get mounted on a wall, people go in, they look at it, they know it's there, and hopefully it will never have to be used. But we want to make damn sure if it does have to be used, it works.
So I did include this in my budget of recommendations just simply for a cutoff issue. At some point in time, we have to say, okay, that's it. We're not going to take anything else. But we always get others, and there will be, as Paul, you might not know, but as Irma does know, sometime between now and February, end of February, I'll give you a list of some usually very small additions that have occurred for whatever reason. A lot of times we'll wait for advisory to go through the budget so that we can have a truing up between the selectmen and advisory so we don't have any outstanding issues when we go to town meeting. And I certainly would recommend this to you, and I would address some of the other issues Mark raised in that process.
So yeah, one of the things I would ask, Ted, is that we, as soon as possible, I would say, whenever you're going to do this, to include that $3,000. It seems like it makes sense on every angle you look at it, so I would be supportive of it.
And so the first place that it manifests itself is your vote, which hopefully, I think we're targeting first week of January for you to vote all the non-school budgets. And so, you know, my recommendation to the board, and then your recommendation forward to advisory.
I'll have a couple more. You go ahead.
One of my favorite subjects, fire hydrants.
Please.
I knew that would get a rise out of them. How are we doing on replacing the old ones?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. I thought about bringing it up in my comments tonight, and then I decided not to.
You were just waiting for me to do it. You knew I was going to do it.
No, we have a replacement program in our capital outlay budget to replace hydrants. This year, I'm very concerned about it because of the drought that we had this year. Aquarian Water did a survey, and I'm glad they did, of leaks throughout the town. And they did find some fire hydrants that were leaking. Not a lot, there were like 4 or 5. But unfortunately, remember, I had to reevaluate my plan in changing out the oldest hydrants and replace some hydrants that were like 30 years old. Life expectancy in a hydrant is anywhere from 50 to 60 years. But I had to reevaluate my plan and change some hydrants out that I had not anticipated. So I think I replaced 4. It was either 3 or 4. I've got a couple right now that are still leaking. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when a hydrant's leaking a gallon a minute, that's 5. I think that works out to 500,000 gallons in a year. So Aquarium's been good about it. They haven't pressed it. We changed 3 or 4 of them. I got a couple more to go, but it has put that program behind somewhat. We have 500, 600 hydrants that are owned by the town. There are over 850 hydrants in the community, townwide, but, that also includes the derby shops, Shipyard, State Park, a whole bunch of them that are privately owned. And of the 800, 550 are owned by the town. So if you divide 550 by a 50-year or 60-year average, you're probably at 10 or 12 need to be replaced every year just to stay where you are. And I'll be honest with you, I can't wait for the town to buy aquarium water, because that'll be a headache that can go somewhere else. Fire chiefs traditionally don't hire backhoes and stock hydrant parts and worry about all that stuff. Generally, it's done under a DPW or whatever. So, but that's where we are with it. And I might even be at the point, Irma, where I need to get a reserve fund transfer. I'm hoping we have a light winter, because the plows always take out 3 or 4 during the winter, and so we did have to change the program this year due to leaking hydrants.
Well, that's good, though, that you took on the leaking ones. Huh.
The Chief, is it you don't have the time or the money to do the ones? I mean,
it's not fire hydrant maintenance belongs in the DPW or in a business that maintains waterworks. There's 5 water utilities in Massachusetts. Excuse me, wrong. I think there's 5 fire departments in Massachusetts where the fire departments actually do the repair work or hire out to do the repair work. All the rest of it's done by a private utility.
Or the DPW.
Or a DPW. Aquarian, in many of their other locations, as I understand it, actually own the hydrants, and they do it. But in the Hingham owns the hydrants. It's a very, very unique situation. So I have to buy hydrants. I have a stock of them over at headquarters. A hydrant itself is almost $2,000. Keep in mind, Paul, that this is a device that has to sit in the ground. The majority of the hydrant is underground. There's a very intricate valve in it. The water has to be closed off below the freeze line. And it sits under water pressure below ground for 50 or 60 years. They're very reliable, but occasionally they have to be replaced.
My only point was I was thinking how we can help you. I mean, when I'm listening about your budget and what you have, and not even going into some of the long-term, issues about what should maybe have been done as of 1968 or shortly thereafter. I'm just saying, is there something that we could do to help you with? Because I know that the whole issue about the hydrants and leakages and rates, people are acutely aware of and interested in, so that's why I didn't know if it was just a matter of a budget item or was it something else?
No, I mean, actually, I think the town's to be complimented, really, in one respect, that we do have this program, although I have to manage it. Again, I don't think it belongs in the fire department, but if the aquarium did a survey, and I understand they did the whole community, so if they surveyed 800 hydrants, and they only found currently 2 of them that are leaking, that's pretty good. That's really good. But again, it's I don't know any other fire chiefs that stock hydrant parts and valves and seals and gaskets, and not only that, fortunately, we were able about when Bill Johnson came along to change to a single hydrant vendor. At one point in time, we had 10 different hydrant types, which meant that was 10 sets of parts that you had to stock. And but maybe it belongs in the DPW or something. It does kind of, and me and Ted have had these discussions. It kind of bothers me when I have to go out, and nothing against our private contractors, but it kind of bothers me when I have to go out and hire a backhoe and a crew and a dump truck and all these things from a private contractor when the community owns the equipment themselves. But again, Randy's got his work to do too.
So, I don't want to get too off the side, but are you saying that you think DPW has the equipment and possibly the personnel that can maintain this?
I believe they have the equipment.
I'm just going to caveat that.
I don't believe they have the personnel.
Yeah, they have the equipment and the expertise, but they don't have the personnel.
Maybe we should look at what would it cost to add sufficient person. If he's going out and renting, there is a cost to that.
There is.
Versus if we had an additional person in the DPW. Maybe somebody could look at that to see what's more cost-effective for the town.
And many times, I think it at least needs to be studied, because many times when a hydrant needs to be replaced, unless it's been hit or there's an issue, we can say, hey, listen, I want this hydrant replaced in the next 6 months. Or you need to, I'll give you a list of 5 hydrants, you need to do them in the next year or two. Many times it isn't something that has to be done right away. Occasionally there'll be a hydrant that will come along that's on the end of a dead-end street or in an area where there aren't any hydrants, and it's a number one priority. We got to get that hydrant right back in service right away, because there's nothing else around it that's available. But it's a good point, and the fire department is responsible for shoveling them in the winter, and I believe that is a fire department responsibility, regardless of who maintains them. And going around once a year, looking at them, which we're going to be doing shortly, checking the hydrant markers, things like that. Again, that's the fire department responsibility. Actually, it's in my notes here, and I forgot to bring it up. I use tax work-off people to paint some of the hydrants, but I don't put them out on busy streets. I don't put them out on Route 53 or on Main Street or places where they can get hurt. And consequently, I have to send firefighters out and fire engines to paint them. And that makes no sense either.
So we should look at that.
One other thing is I didn't mean to surprise Bear Cove when I mentioned this to them, but one of the reasons why we do these budgets is because we want to make sure you guys feel comfortable speaking openly about what you want, and it doesn't always mean you would be able to accommodate it through the whole process, but it certainly, this is a step in the process. So one of my questions was going to be, I know you had requested a little bit more than the 118,000, and I didn't know if there was anything that, in other words, we have the additional request at 132,000.
I think I can explain that one, and Mark and I and Bob talked about it.
Okay.
The 132 that Mark and Bob put in is the current deputy chief's salary, and I sat with the human resources director, and I spoke with the personnel board, and the feeling was that we would never start another deputy on day one at that same salary. We'd create a stepped situation, so they would move eventually, so that they were, we had parity at terms of income level, but not right off on day one. And we've done that with other contracts that we've had.
Makes sense. I didn't know that. I'm glad you told me. I was just curious more than anything about the amount. And the only other thing I'll say is, hopefully, as we move forward with looking at the needs of the fire department, because I'm keenly interested in, I know we've made discussions over time, and this 4th station in South Hingham, I think, is something that is an acute need, as I've said before. And I'm looking forward to listening to the renovations. I know it's all process. I'm favorable of the idea. I don't know the details yet of any of this stuff, but look forward to working with you on that.
I appreciate that. And it might be at some point, at some point in time, maybe it would be appropriate if Randy Sylvester, needs additional hand. If they could do some of that hydrant work, there may be an offset savings there. Randy worked at an aquarium. So it is going to require a little bit of training on those people. You can't just go down and shut down a water main, but I am sure they could figure it out. Those guys over at the highway department, those guys can do anything.
I'm going to echo what Paul said about the station renovations, because when I was on Capitol in 2002, which is 12 years ago, thereabouts, let me get my calculator out, we were talking about the needed renovations, and it's pay me now or pay me more later.
Well, one of the other things I remember that came up, and I wasn't chief 3 months, and I remember Betty Foley calling me about something was going on in the Oval Office, and there was a question about, do we need a fire station? This was in 2005, so we'd be looking for land, and I certainly suggested that. And I would also suggest to you that the renovations done to Central Fire Station, if you remember, I mean, I'm sure you do, that we went from 3 bays there to 2. And we did that with the anticipation that at some point in time there would be another fire station somewhere that would get us back to where we needed to be in response bays. So had somebody had said to me, Chief, there's no chance in hell you're going to get a 4th firehouse, I can assure you that that fire station over there right now would have 3 bays in it, not 2.
Well,
So-
Tom said it would take 50 years, and we're coming up on 50 years, so.
They're lovely buildings.
We do have to start putting together a committee to start seriously looking at it, because it's going to take, what, 3 to 5 years? to do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think the work that Mark and the deputy, along with Roger Fernandez and a couple of your firefighters, with the architects, will be good material for you to have. I think you're going to be ready to show them some data within the next 60 days,
Okay.
and it'll help you decide how you want to approach these issues for the town meeting this year and in the future, along with
Okay,
capital.
We'll look forward to that. Okay,
Thank you.
more?
And if I don't see you before Christmas, have a nice Christmas.
Merry
You
Christmas.
too. As you're leaving, I was going to save it for the end, but I want to thank you and all of the men and women of the fire service for the extra attention that was paid to Lincoln School apartments during the week that the elevator was out.
Well, I'm glad you brought it to our attention. I'd also, for those of you who don't know, we had we put together a heavy response plan for Lincoln School apartments. The fire department did, in the event there was an emergency there, due to the fact it's a 5-story, 60-unit apartment building with no elevator for 6 days, I guess it was.
6 days.
And I'd also like to thank my counterparts from Hull and Cohasset, who agreed to immediately send a response up there had anything happened at all. We call it a heavy response, but thank you very much for
And
taking.
thankfully, nothing happened.
I don't think we had one call.
No. We were listening on the scanner, believe me.
Maybe we should take the elevator out permanently.
No. Wipe that from the tape.
Good night, Mark.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you. Okay, Ted, most of the rest of these are yours.
Yes, and actually, most of these are Betty's. So I'll walk you through these preliminarily, and then Betty will
That's a
take
nice
you
delegation.
the rest of the way. Well, as you know, Betty takes care of most of the selectmen, town hall, town meeting, unclassified. I'll take over some of the tail end budget. So the first budget in this group is the selectmen's budget. The selectmen's budget was the fiscal 2015 current year budget, as revised, is $482,896. The department base request was $491,763. There was an additional request of $25,000 for a grant writer. The total town administrator recommended budget is $491,763, the base budget. I have not recommended the grant writer due to the funding issues throughout the other departmental requests. The increase over last year is $8,867, or a 1.84% increase year over year. Betty can give you the details.
Betty, do you want to just run us through really quickly?
The salary line goes up by approximately $9,000, and that is due to contractual increases. The only increase in the expense line is dues, and they are a function of salary. The MMA dues are typically a percentage of salary, so they go up when salaries go up. Other than that, the only other request on here was the $25,000 for a grant writer, which I understand is, something that we just can't afford to do this year, but I want to keep it fresh in everyone's mind so that when times are a little better, we can seriously consider that, because there are grant opportunities out there that it would be great if we had someone who could work across many disciplines, help out the second floor, help out various departments in seeking grants.
I think the thinking here was, and again, this is a model that's out there in larger communities, usually community development block grant areas. But we have these exercises we go through. We get a call from the state, and they let us know a grant is available. It's usually available in a short period of time, and I'll marshal, along with Betty, together the forces of whatever department or area of government that it applies for, and we'll try to figure out how we can come up with a match, and then we have to scramble, and sometimes we have 5 or 6 grant opportunities, and which ones do we want to go to, and so it's not the regimented process that we're known for in all our other areas. And I think at some point in time, the town should grapple with or cross the line and hire a grant administrator, probably provide some kind of funding that would be matching funding for a variety of grants that the Selectmen's Office, Board of Selectmen would like to pursue. We're in a grant funding world. I had a graph for you that I was going to give you if I was going to really try to sell this year, but I just can't see this going forward when you're going to struggle with other areas in the budget. And it shows grant funding since the 50s. In American government across the board, and the chart is astounding. It's like climbing Mount Everest. First, the federal government decided that they couldn't get the states to do what they wanted to, so they decided to do what our parents learned years ago. He who controls the purse strings controls the action. So, yeah, you want to borrow the car, these are the rules. So that's what happened. And the federal government switched from, if you might recall, in the 70s, we had unrestricted aid we got from the federal government. We don't get anything from the federal government that doesn't have a list of strings attached to it. For example, your highway funding is tied to seat belts or speed limits or whatever the federal government feels is important. So that's how they've stepped around states' rights. And then the states just followed suit. While they complained to the federal government about the federal government overseeing their money as they perceived it, the states just turned around and did the same thing to us. And every grant we get comes with a whole bunch of requirements to do things. This trend is never going to stop. It's only going to continue further and further because these entities have realized they can control the behavior of other governmental entities, smaller ones that need this money, by attaching strings to it. And I can't fathom a world where someone would give that up. So we're going to be in this cycle, and it's going to get more intense as time goes on. The communities that are successful in that are the communities that get ahead of the curve, get good grant writing capabilities, and start looking beyond federal and state grants and start looking to private foundation grants, which are available out there. And that's what I'd hoped we would do on this one, but that's the best I'll sell you on a project I'm not recommending.
Okay.
So I just had a question. So the grant writer that we were additionally possibly requesting, is that a part-time?
That would have been a half-time position.
And is the thinking that would be more efficient in terms of being able to bring in money if we had somebody hired?
As opposed to, asking Abby Pearsall, I got a grant I'm going to give her credit for in my administrative reports. Having her do it and having Roger do it, and and then we grab Barbara Farnsworth from the senior senator to write a grant, and so we have this hodgepodge approach to whatever the service area is. We'll grab the department that's involved and start collaborating about writing the grant. We don't have any professional grant writers on staff. Some of our employees are better than that, better than others at it, but it's an area where we we don't do as well as. And I will say, by and large, I think this would be the first position of its type outside of any major city in Massachusetts.
So what I was going to ask you is, what other communities have grant writers?
Very few. I mean, I worked in Brookline, and they had a grant writer in the, probably since the 60s. But those are large communities that have community development block grants, and the funding comes for the position along with the granting. So it's not typical in smaller communities like ours. But I put it on the table 3 years ago, and I'm going to keep it on the table every year because I think it's important for you guys to think about it, and it might be a strategic advantage for the community down the road to have it.
Well, the only reason I'm even discussing it and beyond is it seems to me it might wind up paying for itself down the line, and so, I would just say on the record, although we probably need to talk about it more, I may be inclined to support something like that because in the end, we may get more money in and save double the salary. So I know we're just beginning the process, but I just wanted to make a point that I think it makes economic sense, financial sense for us to look. There's nothing wrong with being out front on some issues, especially if we're going to save ourselves some money. So.
If we had more money in the budget process, and as money develops in the budget process, this would probably be one of the areas I'd come right back to you first. So, I concur with your sentiment. My recommendation not to pull it out was simply based on the fact that I had said no to $400,000 of other departmental requests across the board. So
I understand. I just wanted to put that on the record that I think it may be something worth looking at.
Okay.
Any other questions on Selectmen?
Nope.
Okay, then the next budget we have is legal. Legal is appearing on page 15. The legal budget being recommended is at $232,000. It's the same as the current year revised budget. No expected increase, and as we know, we struggle to stay within that limit. I just don't see any feasible or documented reason to say, we should increase this right now. The expenses will be as we manage them. We have I couldn't tell you of any cases that we have for fiscal 16 that would drive this budget, so it's just the typical workload. A lot of it's dictated by what happens in the development community. As you can see in some of the charts that we've given you over the years, most of your money is spent in land use. That's what the town is. The town is a landowner, and the town manages land for itself and for, and regulates it throughout the private interests, and that is where most of the money is always spent, and that's what'll drive it. If we get 40Bs and we get other large-scale development projects, we're going to have to expend funds in those areas.
We should also make it clear to the people listening and everybody in the audience that this does not include anything for the Aquarian litigation.
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So, and on that point, just so people at home know, it's a separate budget item for something of that nature in terms of litigation?
Correct.
Okay.
Aquarian is a separate budget item, independent. Other litigation items aren't necessarily, depending upon how you felt about it going to town meeting. But the only way you'd break it out separately is if you had a separate article at town meeting, which we did for Aquarian, because that was such a unique activity compared to routine general legal running the organization.
Do we know where we stand for this for 15?
Actually, we do. I ran some numbers today.
One for each of us?
One for each of you.
Thank you. Thank you, Betty.
And those numbers indicate everything that's been paid, billed and paid through today.
So 94,000?
94,525.
Now, I'm going to just caution you that, that doesn't mean that we're under budget. Even though it's relatively, less than half and we're moving towards the half point of the year, our legal budget will always tail towards the end of the year when we have town meeting, and we have a lot of activity around town meeting that requires, it's a legislative and a legal process, and it requires quite a bit of effort. Town council, for example, I think has probably spent very little time through this point in time in the year, and then at town meeting they'll start ramping up dramatically.
And then also, this does not include the enterprise funds, does not include country club, does not include sewer, does not include the housing trust, and I'm missing one. CPC. These numbers don't include any of those.
Correct. We outsource to those departments individually, although I don't think any of those departments have any significant, although Affordable Housing Trust will with some of their development issues.
So when you say outsource, just so people don't know, you mean that there's maybe legal expenses that are...
We back bill them. So the sewer department, for example, when they utilize town council, we charge them for town council. We allocate that time to them. Country club, if they use town council, or any of the councils, that charge gets associated back to that department.
But it's one of our four, we have four, one of our four.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, your next budget is Town Hall on page 39. And the Town Hall budget for fiscal 15, the current year we're in, is $600,720. The department request of $645,429 with no additional requests represents a $44,709 increase year over year. I've recommended that, and it's a 7.44% increase, a little larger than some of our other budgets, and I'll let Betty take you through that.
The reason it's a little larger is all in the expense line, and it's primarily due to increases in utilities, particularly natural gas. Between natural gas and electric, we're looking at some increases this year based on our fuel and utilities worksheet. It's interesting to note here that if you look at the backup, we're actually expecting to spend more, but we get reimbursed for the electric from SHREC. They have a separate sub-meter, so we bill them out on a monthly basis, and that money comes in by the end of the year, and we put it towards the electric bill.
The lunchroom is going up by $1,000.
The lunchroom
salary.
It's on the when someone's hired, they're hired at the first step and they move through the steps. So she's due a step increase this year.
And you'll see that on the second page, page 40.
Yeah,
It'll detail her 20 hours.
don't have any questions.
The next budget is town meeting on page 16. And again, to orientate you, the town meeting budget for fiscal 15 is $30,992. I'm sorry. Is that correct? Yeah, no, that's correct. Yeah.
I think so.
And the recommended budget, the requested budget by the department was $29,992. No additional requests. I recommended that budget in its entirety. It's a $1,000 decrease over the prior year, or a 3.23% decrease, and Betty can detail the changes.
The reason the request for the amount for town warrants went down is we've had very good luck in our bids recently, so they came in low, so
Great.
no reason to keep more money than we should in that line item.
Okay.
In your last two budgets, the first one is unclassified. Unclassified includes two categories of budgets. Our unclassified category, which is a mix of budgets that cannot be placed in any of the other categories of government, and they've been consistent over a number of years. $10,950 was the current year budget in unclassified. The request is the same amount, $10,950, and no increase. I've recommended it. Any questions on that? Pretty straightforward stuff.
That's a nice, easy one.
The next one is the debt service budget on page 159. The debt service budget is a little interesting. We should talk a moment about it because we have some other work we're doing on it. But I still think you can undertake this budget regardless of the other work that I can just update you on briefly. The debt service budget appears on, like I said, page 159. In fiscal 2015, the debt service budget was $9,500,765. In fiscal 16, it is the department request is $9,608,935, a $108,170 increase, or a 1.14%. Again, this budget is still based on estimates, projections of interest rates, projections of whether the town will issue short or long-term interest. And so, that discussion will go forward, and you folks will have to decide on a borrowing plan as we move forward to town meeting. However, one of the things we've talked about consistently for the last, I want to say, at least 5 years, if not longer, is that the debt service budget, whether we stay short or long term, essentially stays the same. It's just a question of whether or not we take the interest savings and we move them into principal and accelerate the debt schedule. So I think largely the budget will stay similar to these numbers, but again, you won't vote your budget tonight, but consistent.
Do you know off the top of your head what % of our debt is long-term versus short-term?
Well, right now, we have about 45 million, so I would say a substantial portion, 45 million out in short term.
Okay.
So we have a substantial portion in short term. I'm going to say probably more than 50%, because the way we borrow, we tend to borrow hills and valleys, so we're coming up to the top of the hill here. In the preceding year, the other issues are almost done, by and large. So most of it is short term.
The eye chart test, the chart, oh.
Yeah. Well, Jean Montgomery, myself, have been working on a nice proposal. I understand that I think we're meeting on the 16th.
Tuesday.
With the long range, or the debt management group, and we got some nice presentations to show you folks, so hopefully we can get the brain working, and you can give us some good recommendations.
Looking forward to it.
Okay.
Cool. That's it? Is this when we give the quiz to the audience?
Yeah. You actually have an appointment.
Yes, we do. Actually, we're delighted at this one. Paul.
So I will move to appoint Frank Gall to the Conservation Commission for a 3-year term ending June 30, 2017.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. What's
So,
left in your...
I got a few things for you. The first thing I will tell you is that the tax rate has been set. I want to thank Rick Nowlin, Sue Sue Nickerson and Rick worked diligently on this, and I know that Gene Montgomery and the Treasurer's Office is very happy that we were able to get the tax rate set so that they don't have to be here on Christmas Eve like they usually are trying to print their bills out and get them done. Growth came in a little better than we anticipated. We had budgeted $975,000. It came in $1,048,057. So there's about an extra $100,000 in your 15 budget that will flow into your 16 budget that will help the situation. So I wanted to apprise the board of that. The best news I have of the day, though, is that we received notification from FEMA that the map requests that we've been after for a good 6 months now have all been approved.
Thank you, Stephen
And
Lynch.
so I would say that we were able to, and I would say thanks to Peter Williams, and I'm going to hold the thanks for Stephen Lynch for a moment because I'm going to tell you why. Because we've made contact with his office for some help. As you know, Abby Pearsall took the ball with this and really did a great job, and I really want the board to recognize her. I'll be sending her a letter for her personnel file on this matter. But she dogged this from day one, and a lot of communication with the citizens, and you know there was a lot of agitation about this issue, and Abby met with them and walked to their properties and helped them through this process. So a lot of credit goes to her. Peter Williams, who is the consultant we hired from to manage this, he is the one who sent us the letter, and they have approved almost in the entirety Peter Williams' arguments. So it's terrific for us. However, now that the maps have been approved for being redone, what we've been told is that FEMA's Boston office does not have any funding to provide the actual updates to the maps, so we will have to use the old ones until they get to that. Hence the call to Congressman Lynch's office to see if, while he's trying to keep the federal government moving forward, which I know we all hope doesn't stop, we'd like to see if he could figure out a way to free up some funding to get up to Boston's DC office, because the insurance companies will charge based on the old maps until the new maps are officially done and approved by that Boston office. So we feel like we've made it through a huge hurdle, and now we're in another waiting room. So we'll continue to press.
I have to give Catherine Shea in Stephen Lynch's office a big thank you, because I've talked to her almost every single day. I'm sorry, that's an exaggeration. Just about once a week on these maps, and she had a very short list of towns that she would then make the call to FEMA. So I guess they just moved us, like you said, to a different waiting room.
Next item I have is...
Just before you go on, I also want to thank the Congressman for his efforts. I know that going back to the early stages of this, not only was Hingham and our folks working hard, but he was also out front on it. So I appreciate everything he's done, and I know he'll do whatever he can. I think we were talking the other day is the maps are going to be redrawn, but they can't be redrawn until the Boston office does it themselves.
Correct.
So this is a two-step process.
Correct.
Okay.
Also good news coming out of the Conservation Office and Abby Pearsall. The town has been awarded a Phase 2 grant for Walton's Cove Storm Mitigation Project. Total grant was $13,000. The total project was about $18,000. We covered the additional $5,000 with in-kind services to the offices, and so they'll be moving forward with that grant as we go forward. And I just want to point out two people in the Conservation Commission. You make your appointments, and you don't always hear, but Kathleen McDonald and Scott McIsaac both passed the Conservation Commission regional courses for wetlands protection. And so it's important, I think, to note their success in that. And then lastly, I wanted to give you something that I have asked the engineering department to keep me apprised on as we keep going. And so I'm going to try to keep a folder of these going forward, but I'll give these to you, each of you a set.
So pass it down.
And if and I bet you I have some for the record here. And this is the harbor a couple days ago.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
I gave mine to Betty.
Thank you.
This is the harbor. I had them take a couple pictures of some areas that we're really concerned about. As you can see, the storm really wasn't that bad. that we had a couple days ago, but we had a high tide, and we had a full moon. And if I look correctly, and I use my 8-inch hand kind of measuring stick there, that looks like it's about a foot from the top. And if you look at the next page, you could see the same thing. So, I think our examples of climate change and issues that we have to start facing on the waterfront, they're right here. This was a bigger storm. Route 3A would be underwater, and I don't think that's even a slight exaggeration.
No, we've got pictures from Dave Fenton and I have pictures of one of the storms from 2 years ago, where the corner where Red Eye Roasters is.
Correct.
You're about 6 inches underwater, and our harbor master shed almost became waterborne.
And then the last picture in the package I wanted to show you is Union Street. We're monitoring that regularly to make sure that it's doing what we thought it would do. And as you can see, again, I think Mark sent out an email. We got 5 inches of rain within a short period of time, and it's just amazing that we didn't see this kind of flooding. From that example, what we are doing is we're identifying hot spots around town where we have significant flooding when we have a rain incident, and we're working to put that on another GIS layer map so that the folks at DPW can get out there. Oftentimes, the problem is drainage from the structures that are getting blocked or clogged, and so if we know about it, we can get there. We can start providing relief to that area as soon as possible. That's all I have for you today.
What do you have?
Just a couple things. I mean, were you going to talk about the police department at all? I didn't want to.
Oh, I brought it. Did you bring the 3 awards?
Well, you could talk about that.
Okay. We share well.
I think the only thing that I probably would say is that last evening we had our first meeting from the Hingham Substance Abuse Coalition, and we had some folks from Quincy and Cohasset come. We had folks from town, police, fire, in-house. Betty was there, and Board of Health, and we had a very, very good first meeting. So I say that because we're moving, the ball's rolling. There are many issues that we have to face in this town, in this region. We're going to work collaboratively with other towns in the South Shore. We're going to be meeting on January 14th, 2015 at 5 o'clock. We're going to try it. It's a Wednesday. I encourage people to come. We do need everybody's assistance and support to make this thing work. So as we pass through the holiday season and enjoy our families, if you can find the time, we'd love to see you next month.
That's it?
I think that's it.
Cool. I've got a couple things. I want to echo Paul's. This drug task force is very important. The drugs are here. I mean, Hingham is not immune. We're lucky that they're not as prevalent as in other towns, but to be vigilant and understand these and work with the kids and the young people is very important. So I definitely applaud you for that. Let's see. I want to thank the Hingham Police Department for the senior luncheon today at the Country Club. It was like 200 people. It was totally sold out, and it was really wonderful. Mike Perrano does serve food. I wish we'd gotten a picture of him in an apron, but I know, I missed that one. It was great to see our policemen and women doing the serving for the seniors, but it was a wonderful time. Ted showed up. We kind of passed in the night. I was in there, I had the early shift, and the guys had the late shift. So, good job. Thank you very much. Again, the food pantry is working on their holiday baskets, so if people would like to help, I'll give you their phone number again, 781-740-8181. HCAM, Hingham Community Access and Media TV, is also doing a survey. They really would like your input. It's up on the website, it's on the town website, and it's on their own website. Please take that survey. They're doing wonderful work, and it gets better all the time. They did unbelievable down at Hingham Christmas in the Square this past weekend, where people were photographed and put on video. So that was a good time. And the Hingham Police Department on Wednesday received 3 awards. The Hingham Police Department received the AAA Gold Award, the highest award you can get, for pedestrian safety programs and not having a pedestrian fatality in 14 years. They also received the AAA Safety Education Award for safety initiatives and programs presented to the public. And the third one they got, Officer Ryan Ross received the AAA Traffic Safety Award for his efforts enforcing seatbelt laws and their use. So way to go. Really, really great. Now I'm going to shamelessly plug something because Bob Curley did this for 2 nights at CPC and I have to outdo him. 2 of our town residents have authored an amazing book. In fact, if you want to put it so Bob can pick it up, Steve Dempsey and Alex McMillan. And since the holidays are coming, Hanukkah starts next week and Christmas comes, and be nice presents. It's Hingham Then and Now, and the exciting part about this, they have pictures of the old days in Hingham and a particular building or parcel of land, and then they have photographed it today as well. And we've already told them they have to do a volume 2. It's a great little book. You can get it at the Historical Society, I think Buttonwood Books, and what else can I say about it? This is a shameless plug. So I'm not quite as eloquent as Bob Curley, but I think this will do. And congratulations to both Steve and Alec. I think wonderful collaboration. Steve, of course, is in our sewer department, and Alec is our town historian. So, with that, I'll take a
Motion to adjourn?
Absolutely. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Is this your copy?
Yes, it is my copy, which I'm going to retrieve.